I think one of the most important things we talked about was love as an action. Love as something to do.
Love should be in action. We're talking about it as if it's like this invisible force that we don't have control over. I feel like we very much do have control of love. Like that is the path, right?
Can you be dishonest and loving at the same time?
Yeah, I think you can.
Dishonest or withholding information?
Love don't never fade, it's forever. I swear it was born in the wrong era.
What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome to the More Love Podcast. I am Stephen Harris.
And I am Vida Harris.
And here we believe that love is more than just a feeling. It is actions and principles that deepen our relationships with ourselves and one another.
Beautifully stated, baby.
Thank you.
And you are probably here for a nice little podcast that we like to call Crown Jewels.
Rest in peace.
But do not fear. Although it's RIP Crown Jewels, this version of the pod is very similar to Crown Jewels. And I might even go as far to say that it's even better.
I think it's way better. So for those that don't know, we recorded Crown Jewels. The last episode we recorded was in October of 2020. And 1 month later, we figured out we were pregnant. So we have pretty much spent that time processing being pregnant and then learning how to be parents.
Yeah.
Good parents.
Yeah. And we're still working on it, to be completely honest.
It's a work in progress, for sure. But we always knew that we wanted to get back to this thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, in the meantime, life kept happening and we went through a lot of major events. We went through a Donald Trump presidency, an entire global pandemic that broke a whole lot of people up.
Yeah.
But I think for us, brought us closer together.
Yeah.
And Will Smith slapped Chris Rock on the world's biggest stage. That happened.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. And apparently now we have aliens.
They're here.
Yeah, they're here. The aliens are here.
But one thing that also happened that I feel like is actually a pretty big deal that not a lot of people paid attention to was that the U.S. Surgeon General put out a release to say that loneliness and isolation are at epidemic status. I didn't even know that that was possible.
Yeah.
And so he said that it was at epidemic status, even saying that being lonely and disconnected from your community is as bad or worse than smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
That's wild.
This is a big deal.
Yeah.
Like, this is a moment. And so Business Week also put out an article that said that searches on Google for how to meet people are surging. So clearly people are lonely. They're in need of connection.
Yeah. And when we look at like the comment section in social media, it really does seem like we are more divided and resentful of one another than we have ever been. And that's crazy because I know I'm a person that leans on social media to connect with my people.
Right.
Social media is supposed to bring us together, but reading the comments, it actually seems like it's doing the total opposite. And I think it makes it easier and more convenient to fire off insults at one another. It's as easy as sending a text.
Yeah, I think that Trump presidency really polarized us. And I think that also that social distancing that we had to do in the pandemic just solidified that even more. And so at this time where we are all feeling some sense of loneliness, or more of us are feeling lonely, we really felt like this is the perfect time to lean in on a bigger and better mission.
Yeah.
One that we hope will change us for the better and maybe change you for the better too.
Yeah. Yeah. So for us, we always knew that we wanted to come back to our podcast. It was originally something that was just for us, our friends and our family, to bring us together. But we decided to go with this bigger and better mission and do more research into the actual topic of love.
Yeah, obviously we don't see ourselves as experts, but we really wanted to have some oomph behind like the stuff that we talked about.
For sure.
And so a friend of mine, Luke, recommended a book to me that he had not read. Luke, have you read the book yet, Luke? And the book is called All About Love by Bell Hooks. And in that book, what she talks about is how we as just a society have grown too comfortable with this really wishy-washy idea of love. And there are no particulars, and we just kind of look at it as this mysterious thing because we don't have to hold ourselves accountable when we all just say, well, you get to define love. And we all get to define love. You can say that love hurts. You can say that love is all these things that are actually toxic and not be held accountable.
Facts.
And in that book, what she goes on to say is that if we can all build a common understanding around what it means to love as an action, then we all actually have power to harness to create more love for ourselves and for each other. Nice. And for me, when I was reading that book, that was my aha moment where I looked at Steph and I said, the name of the podcast is More Love.
Yep.
And this is the mission, baby.
Yep. And here we are.
Yeah.
So with all of that context, I think we can pretty much get into it. Well, first, I guess let's let you know we have segments now. And this first segment is going to be called Breaking It Down so that it can forever and consistently be broke. And that is where we are going to dive into really the fundamentals of love. Especially this episode is all about the definition of love. Let's define it. What does it look like in daily practice? Is love a choice? We're going to go deep on those specific topics and kind of really get into what it's like in our daily practice.
Yeah, like build that common understanding around what love is. We want to define our terms. As it were. And then after that, we're going to try something new out. So this is different from Crown Jewels, where we want to talk about the walk. And that is a direct bite from the read because they're the best.
Yeah.
So our little twist on that is that we want to really get like really raw and personal around our journeys.
Yeah.
We are big on saying like we are not gurus.
Right.
And so really just sharing with y'all, what does it look like for us to walk this new path and, make the loving choice? How does that work for us? And what challenges do we face?
Yeah. I think it's going to be a really good, raw, real life look at our imperfect path.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then once that's all done, we'll be right back here to wrap it up.
All right. So let's get into the very first episode of More Love.
It's time to break this thing down.
Let's break it down. All right.
I think we need to start at the basic of most basic elements of this, right?
Yeah.
And define what love is. Because for this whole podcast, we're going to be talking about love, and it needs to be clear what we mean when we say love. So I'll kind of introduce it a little bit.
Yeah,
and then
where
maybe
it came from, kind of the thought behind it.
Commonly, when people talk about love, they are referring to their affection. And sometimes their care, but often I think maybe not even affection and care. Maybe it's the feeling that you have, their admiration.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like something that lives inside of you, which I think is something that might spark our definition of love. So that's one way to look at love. But the way that we want to look at love is one that is informed by our reading of All About Love by Bell Hooks. And it's actually not her definition. It's actually M. Scott Peck.
Yeah.
The Road Less Traveled guy.
Which is also a really good book.
Yeah, I still need to read it. But okay, so here's how he defines it. He defines love as the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth.
For me, I had some back and forth on this. I think mainly there was two things that I thought it was maybe missing or maybe something that was being addressed that I wasn't sure was as universal. But the first part was spiritual, like the spiritual growth, right? And I was like, maybe some people don't believe in a spirit. And so to add that into the definition might maybe throw some people off.
Maybe it just means we need to define spirit or spiritual, right?
Yeah. I think that's a really good idea. So like when I defined it, it was like your innermost self.
Like who you feel like you are, no matter the environment, your age, like what lives inside of you at your core.
Yeah, what lives inside of you at your core, your deepest self. And that works so well because the more reading I do on the subject, like the more it leads you down kind of the spiritual path and like the connectedness, the oneness, all of those things. And like, so for people who don't necessarily want to latch on to all of that, when you start to walk the path of love, it will take you there. And so you can kind of make your own decisions. But yes, I think it is good to define spirit as being like one's innermost self, because I do think that's something we can all agree on.
Yeah.
Another thing I thought it was missing, but I think is maybe kind of covered in it. I thought it was missing the connection, like just that connecting from one to another.
Do you feel like maybe it's missing connection because it's really just defining one word, right? Like, what are we talking about? What is love? But not necessarily what is loving. Like, I don't know if the definition is to say like, and here's how you do it. I feel like the definition, what it kind of speaks to, it says like the will, right? Like let me revisit it. The will to extend oneself. So I feel like having that intention to apply your energy, your action to pour into somebody is like the impetus of all the different actions, but like that can look different for everyone, or there might be like different aspects of how you do that.
Yeah. So I had another thought on that though, because I feel like the connection might be what sparks the will. Just that, but I described it one time when we talked as a tether, and with the ever presence of this tether, then that would be the thing that sparks the will. So that's what I was wrestling with on that definition.
Okay, let me tell you how that complicates things for me, because I think that the love should be in action, but if we describe it as a tether, it's not, it's really, we're talking about it as if it's like this invisible force that we don't have control over, where I feel like we very much do have control of love. Like that is the path, right? Like choosing that love and like walking in that. But I do feel like the inherent desire to connect or to feel that connection is what drives us to commit to the action of loving. So I feel like it's all related.
Yeah, but I think you broke it down there, because we're talking about the action. I think one of the most important things we talked about was love as an action, love as a something to do, and not this invisible force that you can't feel, touch, smell, whatever, or not something that you don't have control over. But if we're looking at it from that perspective, something that you do, an action, then yes, this definition will suffice. And like this is what I was kind of wrestling around in my head about with it. But my conclusion was also this definition will do.
Yeah. I think I'm really glad that we had this conversation about what love is, because I think that even though we've had so many conversations about what we think love is, that we still weren't actually perfectly aligned on what it is. And we probably individually don't fully define it the same. But I feel like for the purpose of this thing that we're doing here, we'll say it's an action. But I do think we should revisit this conversation. Like, it might actually be cool to revisit the conversation later in the podcast and see, like,
understanding grows.
Like, we might see it differently as we like walk down this path. And with the tether and the action of loving, I feel like that answers a really common question about love that comes up. You know what I'm about to say?
I think so.
Is love a choice?
Is love a choice? Yeah. When we were just talking about it, I was like, oh, that goes into is love a choice?
I feel like that makes it really clear that it is a choice. When you think about love as an action, just the same as stepping one foot in front of the other, you have to choose it. It's something that you're choosing. I think that because love gets so tied up in romance and like that story of, oh, it was a love at first sight. You know, I saw you and I just knew. And thinking of love as like that deep admiration, you think that it's like not within your control. It's not something you can really grasp. But when you make that mind shift into love being an action, you have so many more opportunities to say to yourself, what am I choosing here? Am I going to choose love?
Yeah.
What's your thought, though?
The act of loving is a choice.
Yeah.
You do have a choice. And it's so funny because once you start to become more aware of the act of loving and how it plays throughout your daily life, you see how many opportunities during just micro moments in your day that you have to choose love. And that's another reason why it's so powerful to have the definition, right? Because I know exactly what I'm doing and I can test myself and say, am I acting towards like nurturing the spiritual growth of whatever's in front of me, even if it's myself.
Yeah, it's accountability, because now you can hold yourself accountable.
Yeah.
You know that you have a choice. You know that it's an action. And so now you have to ask yourself, okay, am I making the right choice? Am I making the loving choice?
The loving choice
here?
Yeah.
And so I want to share an example. You already know this example, but I will reiterate. I had an example the other day. It's like the most random example. It's not deep or anything, but on a micro level, when you think about love being just like a series of choices, it adds up. And so this is my pedicure story where I was getting a pedicure and the lady across from me was being so rude to the people in the shop. And she was just like not making eye contact and she was being really short with them. And I was ready to like stare her down because I wanted her to understand, like, I see what you're doing. Yeah. But I took a second and I asked myself, what would be a more loving way to look at this woman? And I looked at her with those eyes and I realized this lady looks tired. This lady probably has kids. And don't I know what that does to you, how that makes you so tired. And maybe this is like the only moment she has to try to like take care of herself. And she is trying her damnedest right now to like give herself that time. And she just has nothing left. Instead of like putting myself above her or like just giving her the negative energy that I very much wanted to, stepping into that like compassion and trying to choose the loving thought, even though I didn't have any interaction with her.
Yeah. But and you know what? The funny thing is, like, that was for you. It was more for you than it was for her. But you expressing that compassion and empathy and putting yourself in her shoes in that moment, it was you choosing love. But what it did was it helped you. It kept you from having to feel the negative thought and emotion. Like, doesn't mean she was right. And it doesn't mean that you don't care about the person she was being terrible to. Yeah. But instead of you radiating heat at this person, you was like, you know what? I'm gonna put myself in your shoes, and you know, maybe you're having a really rough go of it, and this is how you release. Doesn't make you right, but like I can be more loving towards you in this moment in my mind. I think you touched on something really good, because I didn't think of that as for me. I don't know if I thought about who it was for, right? I was kind of like focused on the practice, but I think that's a really good point, that choosing love, even if it's just the loving thought, it comes back to you immediately. Like, being in this state of like looking for opportunities to love, it ends up nourishing yourself too. And I thought that was really cool. Like, and even just to be like proud of myself, like, oh, okay. And to feel like what I felt like was, it was like refining my practice of like getting in the habit
You said something to me the other day, actually. Actually, when I told you this story, you said that the loving thought, the compassion is often a replacement rather than an automatic response.
Right. Yeah. I'm living that.
Yeah.
And I think anybody who is watching this and wanting to start walking that path and having a more loving life, I think it's really important to express that is what it looks like early.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like I choose love and now I'm going to walk out and I'm going to be in peace and everything that comes in front of me, I will just love and nurture its spiritual growth. Initially, like, you are still yourself.
Yeah.
You are still yourself. And initially, the thought that you would normally have is going to pop in. And I think the practice of it all is being able to replace that thought and taking that moment to replace it with a more loving thought or action.
Yeah.
And like, that's the walk. That's the practice. And it may never change.
Right. That's what I was thinking, but I'm like, that will probably always be what it looks like. Maybe it'll become easier.
Maybe it becomes easier.
Maybe you will more often automatically go to the loving thought, but it's not really fair to think that you will reach love nirvana and you're just like bursting with glitter.
I have that problem. Like I have that with, like, I don't know if it's just an instant gratification type thing that like I'm always expecting, but when I set my mind to do something, like I'm expecting to walk out of the bedroom door and there be a parade for me, like waiting because I made this choice.
I'll throw you
everything.
I'll throw you a parade. I know that's not the point, but I'm just saying.
I know you will,
literally.
But that's that's like I'm waiting for like everybody to be super happy and excited because I made this choice and like the world is a new hue of blue for me.
Yeah,
and like, you walk out of your room and everything the same, and
everything the same.
But inside it's different. And when I noticed it, so we started down this path really a few months ago when we wanted to dive back into the podcast. Like, we started doing the practice, and when I really noticed it was taking effect on both of our lives was when your mom asked us. She was over our house and she was like, "How are you guys doing?" And we had a long, hard day. We got a 2-year-old, that boy wild. And we both were like, we're great.
We both in unison were like, great.
We're great. Yeah. And it wasn't a fake.
Yeah.
We're great. And I normally don't say I'm great. Like,
no,
that
you
is
don't.
not, I'm usually like, I'm cool.
I'm okay.
All right. I'm okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that. Like, very neutral. But in that moment when I checked in, felt myself, my inside, my spirit, that was great.
I love that. And you know what? I feel like your love journey has a lot to do with loving yourself, because I think, like, obviously we all have work to do there, but like that's a high priority for you. And I think that we talked about how like being on the loving journey just feels better for you, but also I think that one of the things that helps make this easier is accepting who you actually are. So you said that you want to walk out of the room and there's a parade and the sky is bluer and blah, blah, blah. But in walking this path, I think you become really self-aware and it helps to get to a point where you can say, this is who I am. This is where I am. And I'm going to work with me. Because it doesn't work when you're constantly just using like should statements. Like, I should. It's more like working with understanding where you're at, meeting yourself where you're at, and like achieving that type of harmony. Yeah.
Accepting yourself. I liked when you said work with yourself. Like, this is what I'm working with, this is what I got, this is what I came with, and this is what it's gonna be, and I'm gonna love that. I'm gonna nurture my own spiritual growth. And in order to do that, gotta accept myself, can't doubt myself, can't play myself, can't poison myself, can't do all of the crap every day. So one of the big things like that came into my life was around diet. And every time I'm about to eat something, I have to ask myself, like, am I loving myself by eating this thing?
Yeah.
And a lot of times the answer is no.
I was just going to ask you, what do you do when the answer is no? How does that look for you?
I accept it. I accept it because what happens is gradually I do better. I make the better choice more often than if I didn't ask myself that question at all. And it's definitely not still perfect. Right. It's not perfect.
That's the point.
But there's more good choices that happen. And same thing with other parts in life, like talking to myself, like just your self-talk, and if having a moment of doubt or like a moment of anxiety or depression, or if you just mess something up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Stopping that self-talk and replacing that thought and just like asking the question, am I loving myself?
So you talking about self-acceptance made me think of something else that Bell Hooks talks about in All About Love. She talks about perfection in the book. And I'm going to really be summarizing here, but she talks about how we should strive for a perfect love, knowing that perfection doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And it's in the striving that you get the ultimate love. It's just really the aspiration to continue to improve, the will to continue to pour into yourself and other spiritual growth. And that's what that journey is. Like, it doesn't have to look perfect automatically. But can you do a little bit better? Every time.
I like the word ultimate. I like getting there.
Yeah.
Like, you are going at perfect, which does not exist.
Right.
In the journey towards perfect, only by the end of your life will you get ultimate. Because it was the best that you could do.
The best version. Yeah.
And my ultimate, your ultimate look totally different.
Yeah.
But by making those little refinements, little tweaks, a little bit here and there, every day for the rest of your life, you will reach your ultimate. Your ultimate.
Oh, I love that. This makes me want to ask you something, actually. So you talk about your ultimate love. And I think that there are a lot of ways in which love can look different depending on who's thinking about it, who's receiving it, who it's coming from, like that kind of thing. But are there commonalities? So Bell Hooks tries to do this. Actually, it might be Eric Fromm that she took this from. But she tries to say, like, these are the common things that you should see in love. And it's like responsibility, commitment, honesty, affection, and care, like something like that. Now, some people feel like people show love in different ways. So, for example, some people will have fathers who don't know how to show affection.
Right.
But they're providing for the family, like financially, and they're saying, like, well, this is me showing, my love.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious what you think. What does love look like no matter the context? Do you agree with like those things that Bell Hooks threw out, or that I'll take credit because I don't know if that's what she said?
I like those elements, and I think we have to be real and say love is definitely an amalgamation of a whole lot of smaller things and actions. And are there commonalities? Yes, but like I think it can be a mix of different things. And so I can't repeat the 5 things that you just named off, right? But if you have 3 out of those 5, and maybe not the complete 5, are you now not loving?
I say yes.
Okay.
But I don't think they all have to exist in the same moment. I don't think that's possible, right? Like these are the pillars, the foundation of love. And maybe something that we don't think about is that love isn't necessarily consistently sustained.
Yeah,
so
facts.
while you can be loving towards someone in one moment, you are loving right now, like you're showing up in that, there can be another moment where you're not. So it's almost like the absence of those things is when you say it's not love, not necessarily the checking the boxes of like everything. I don't know if that made sense, but for instance, honesty is one of those things. Can you be dishonest and loving at the same time?
Yeah, I think you can, but it's a really tightrope to walk.
Dishonest or withholding information?
That is it. Withholding something, right? Because I don't think that you can handle it.
Right. But is that dishonest?
So I think that lying by omission is dishonest, and it just depends. I guess it depends on the context. Not saying something is not necessarily. It's definitely not the same as saying something that's false.
Yeah, like I think there's a difference between like not being forthcoming with information. Like I feel like couples probably can relate to this a lot. Not being like, you was farting in your sleep last night. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to tell you you was farting in your sleep. I'm not trying to embarrass you. Yeah. Like, you don't need to know that. And I can be loving in my withholding of that information. But yeah, there's a line. Yeah. There's a line.
And when in doubt, lean towards trusting the other person to be able to handle it.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people think that they are loving people by trying to manage their emotions.
Yeah, I think I'm protecting you.
Yeah, you think you're protecting me when I don't know if you were being specific to you. No,
I mean, but it's something I did. It's definitely a way I show up sometimes. So,
yeah,
I wasn't meaning that, but yes, we can go from that perspective because it's definitely a way I show up sometimes.
Yeah, but one of the things that the Bell Hooks says in my Bible all about love is that open communication and being able to come to someone and be like, hey, I love you, but we need to talk about this thing, actually builds a certain trust to know that someone will come to you and have the hard conversation. Yeah. And that those hard conversations are actually really, really helpful.
Yeah. They help. It's counterintuitive, but hard conversations help strengthen the love bond. Maybe.
I think so. I think hard conversations have absolutely strengthened our bonds.
Yeah. I think so. Even though I don't like having them, like, I don't think I ever will, but I guess that's why they're called hard conversations.
Yeah, they're not easy, but being able to sit in that discomfort with somebody and say, this is worth the discomfort. Yeah. I'm not gonna put this discomfort above the connection we have, above the responsibility that I am committed to loving you. Like, that kind of thing I think is important. And that's one of the reasons why when we thought about restructuring the podcast, we were really big on like, let's make sure we're asking each other uncomfortable questions and really like sharing that with y'all in hopes that you will watch us and also kind of like go to your loved ones and ask those questions too. Yeah. It's a big part of the journey.
Yeah. Walk with us. Because it's one of those things, we said this so much, like love is one of those things that you can never have too much of. And
Preach.
Also the fact that it is like reflective and it ends up coming right back to you is amazing. And so you can put out as much as humanly possible.
Yeah.
And there will still be more room for you to put out more love, and it will come back to you. So you will be replenished. Like you won't run out of it.
That's cool real. Okay. More on that later though. When we get to the walk, I have something to say about that. Okay. I think that is real, but I am struggling a little bit. I feel like you know where I'm going with it, but we need to talk about that. Okay. So before we get into the walk, there was one more topic that I wanted to talk about, which is, going back to, we talked about love being in action. We talked about the tether and all that. How, with all that understanding, how does one know when they love someone? Is that even a thing anymore?
How does one
I know I just spraying that on you.
How does one know? How do you know when you love
when you
someone?
love someone? Is it now just a matter of I made the choice? I made the choice.
Yeah.
I love you. And how do you put a hierarchy to or do you even put a hierarchy to like levels of love, or do we need to use some other type of vocabulary for what we refer to when we talk about knowing you love someone, like maybe affection or admiration?
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to butcher this because like my memory is not the greatest, but there are different forms of love that are typically like characterized in like different religions. So different religions will say, you know, I have this type of love, which is like brotherly love. And then there's like the love of God, which is like the perfect love or ultimate love. And then there's this type of love that is like my family love or the love for your neighbor. Mm-hmm. So I think there's different subcategories of love. And I say there's subcategories because they all extend from the same place. So the same practice, the same nurturing of spiritual growth is actually gonna apply to all of those subsets. But like, your romantic love feels different.
Yeah. So is there a knowing anymore though? You know, like we think about it as like, how do you know? Is there a knowing at all?
I think there is a knowing, but I think it is different for everyone.
Okay.
Because I think everyone, and we're specifically talking about romantic love here, right?
Maybe.
Okay.
I'm gonna keep it nice and vague.
Yeah. I think it's different for everyone. I think what Stefan is looking for in romantic love is different from maybe what Nordy is looking for in romantic love. And so my knowing felt different than his knowing. And when I went into our relationship, I knew what frequency of human I was looking for because I wanted it to feel like home.
Yeah.
I wanted that person to instantly feel like home. I wanted them to feel nurturing, caring. I wanted to light up when I saw them and vice versa. I knew, and I didn't want him to be an a-hole. I knew what that looks like for me. And I wanted to have also physical attraction to him as well. But there's some people that don't need
I'm one of those.
Physical attraction. There's some people that don't need it to feel like home. Like maybe home is something that was really traumatic for them, and I need you to feel the opposite of that. So I think it is different. And the same thing for friends, because what I needed in a friend when I was a younger man is not the same as I need right now.
That's so real. I wonder if what it breaks down to is knowing that this person checks enough of the boxes that I have decided exist, like the threshold for me to say, yes, I will dedicate an extra amount of will to your spiritual growth.
Yeah.
And then when I was thinking about this, I thought about it as like, I think there are levels of love, right? Because not everyone can have the same amount of access to your energy. You know, like you can't just everyone you run into on the street come and be like, let's heal you. Do you need a ride? Do you need food? Do you know, like that's not possible. Yeah. So in some way you have to prioritize. Yeah. So these are my levels. The first level is like thoughts and prayers, where kind of like with that lady where it was like, oh, okay, maybe she's tired. She's good. Like, I feel like that was loving to her in my thoughts. Right. And then, but the on the other side of the spectrum, like the really deep commitment and like showing up every day is a lifelong partnership where you are in each other's faces every day and you have constant opportunities to show up in love, which is not just like a natural, easy thing to do. Like it's work. And so it's you saying, I'll do the work. I'll take the action to look at all of these opportunities to love you and choose love as often as I possibly can. That's very different from, thoughts and prayers.
Yeah.
But all love.
Yeah, no doubt. What came to me was like thoughts and prayers, time and attention.
Limited.
Because I think it's a spectrum.
Within, yeah.
And then there's like actions and commitments. Like there is like all of these different things exist on this spectrum, and like how much of each of these type things am I willing to give to any human at any moment? And I had
and you have criteria for all, I think.
You should.
Yeah.
You should, because you have to be aware. Everyone. So the spiritualists will say you are to love everyone. And I think you can have thoughts and prayers for everyone.
Right. I'm like, everybody gets that. Everybody take these. You get a thought and a prayer. You get a thought and a prayer. Yeah.
You get a Instagram prayer, Instagram prayer, comment. It's a prayer hands in the comments. Bam.
Sending love and light.
Yeah. You can get that. Everybody can get that.
Everybody can get this love.
Everybody.
And light.
And that, let us not act like that is nothing. Because the opposite does exist.
Right.
You could be sending negative energy. You could be sending out hate. You could be sending out jealousy.
Yes.
You could be sending out like all of these lower frequency things. So you have enough in you to thoughts and prayers the entire world.
Period.
There are some people that don't deserve it, and they will show themselves, I think. And you don't want to leave yourself open.
It's not on you to figure out. On thoughts and prayers, at least.
At least on thoughts and prayers. Yeah. But you do have to prioritize when it starts to come to like time and attention, and then your actions and commitments, because there are so many people that just
go ahead. I'm sorry, I was about to interrupt you, but I feel like it becomes a choice that you have to make, and like when a person brings toxic energy, you have to love yourself too. Like when you think about the definition, it's to the will to positively affect or something like that, your own and another's. And so if the choice has to come and you see this toxicity, I think you have to say, I have to love myself first. Yeah. And maybe I got to bring you down a level on the love hierarchy. Maybe you need to go to thoughts and prayers level.
Yeah. This may be a bit of a tangent, but we're going to talk about this in a later episode, talking about self-love. The more I went down this path and started to like let love exist in my mind, like in the forefront, the more I realized how much I have to love myself first in order to properly love anyone, from you to the man in the mirror to the man down the street to our son. Like so many things that I might want to change about the people around me that sparks all of these different emotions and reactions. If you really drill down to it, the change ends up having to be how you feel about yourself.
Fully agree. I would love to hear more.
So trippy. We'll say the rest of that
we're
tangent.
Doing a whole episode.
Yeah,
all right.
We're gonna do a whole two episodes on that.
Yeah.
We'll do a whole 2 episodes on that. But I just think what you just said really brought me there, and really like brought me to the RuPaul quote. If you can't love yourself, how in the hell you gonna love somebody else?
Yeah.
That is some of the realest game ever spit.
It's such a short sentence, but it's like that encompasses so much, and you don't really realize it until you're like, all right, I want to give all this love, and you look at your cup and you're like, my cup is not quite full. How do I fill it? It's like, I love myself.
Ooh,
okay, this gonna be a journey.
Man, I like that. I feel like that is a solid segue into the walk.
The walk. Okay. Would you like to start to share your walk, or would you like me to share mine first?
I can share mine because it directly correlates with what we just
Okay, I want you to share yours first. But first, let me introduce to the people what the walk is.
Yeah.
So the walk is actually inspired by the read, but also from the brilliant brain of Stephen ST2 letters Harris. We, for the walk, want to talk about like what it has been to walk the path of love. We talked about being honest. We want to be very real with y'all. We are not gurus.
Nope.
We are not here to coach you yet. This is really about sharing our journey with you and us all understanding that we are not perfect. We are not holding ourselves to those expectations, and we all have challenges. But yeah, we want you to see what this looks like for us. So the walk will be our time to kind of share like what we've been focusing on, challenges we've seen, maybe how we overcame them or didn't.
Yeah.
So do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no, I love everything that you said. Like,
Okay.
the walk is just a moment for you to really be on the path
And we on
with
the path.
us. And like, to reiterate, the podcast is not a how-to for anybody. If anything, it's a how-to for us. And like, you're here. Like, we're figuring it out. And I think that's what the walk is. It is a real moment of us figuring it out in real life. And what did that look like?
And I'll add one more thing before you talk about your walk, and just say, we would love for this to be conversational. And so as you hear us talk about our walk, we love to hear about your walk too. So feel free to share that with us.
Yes. Share in the comments. Like, how are you walking now?
How you walking?
How you walking? Come on.
All right, let's get in your business.
All right. Oh man, so many walks getting walked. But if the one that sticks out to me the most, that I see the biggest change in myself and in my everyday life, is with our child, with our toddler, our 2-year-old. So we have a 2-year-old son at the time of this recording. He'll be 2 next week. And his name is Saint, and he will be all up and through this podcast, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But he is a very strong-willed little man, and he is quintessential toddler. So all the things that you think about toddlers and what they are supposed to do and how they act, he does those things.
On 10.
Yeah. And I come from a very authoritarian background, and that's how I was parented. I was parented to be seen, not heard, and stay out of grown folks' business. I was parented to make myself as small as possible, as often as possible. That is a decision. We consciously decided to raise him to be the opposite, to raise him to be free and to take up space. What that looks like as a toddler is like a toddler, like wilding on the regular. And instead of choosing to stifle him in moments so that you can control him. So the way I was raised was not in a way to be free and to take up space. And we consciously decided to raise him different. And so there were a lot of times when he would, let's say, like, he would cry about certain things that I didn't understand, or he would just like act up, get into something, throw a tantrum. Those things affected me in a way that like I really wasn't used to. And my first inclination was to control him.
Yeah.
And I had to realize that I am not here to control him. And so the real path, the real walk for me lately has been to change myself instead of trying to change him. And I was really, really focused on how can I change him? How can I get him to be this way? I also don't want him to be this way. And like, there's just kind of this anxiety and this fear that he's gonna grow up to be this spoiled brat of life. And like, how he ends up turning out is gonna be fully on him. I think I have some influence.
Yeah.
But like, his personality, worst case scenario, he goes to jail, or, he's a drug addict or whatever. Like, will I not love him if that worst case scenario happens?
Is that what you ended up having to ask yourself?
Yeah. That is the walk. Like, and the walk isn't even exploring the worst case scenario. The walk is in moments when Saint is doing something that makes me want to control him, to turn the mirror to myself and control myself.
Ooh, pause. That is so good. Like, I feel like we need to take a breath on that. That's beautiful, baby.
Yeah. When I want to control him, I stop and control myself. And there's other moments, like, to add to that too, it is also like, and then try and connect. So I'll control myself and then try and connect to him instead of just trying to control him. And that practice has been so beneficial for me in just like my energy throughout the day. Like, Saint will exhaust you. It's a toddler. Like, kids will exhaust you, especially with owning your own business and also like having a romantic life and like a friend life and all of these other aspects of life. At the end of the day, you can be very, very exhausted. My exhaustion level is a lot less because I am not trying to control something I can't control.
You know what to expect. And he's going to be himself. And instead of having to like fight against that, you're like, all right, we're going to do this dance. I think too, a good point about control is that you can't be loving and dominating at the same time.
We didn't get to touch into that because we didn't talk a whole bunch about what love is not. We need to.
We do.
But
that might be another episode.
But let's stop there.
Yeah.
It is not dominating, and you cannot be loving and dominating at the same time. So that's my walk. That's my process. That's what I'm going through right now.
Lovely.
Your turn, babe. What is your current walk?
My current walk. I have several walks.
Several walks.
I was like, which one will I talk about today? My walk that I wanted to talk about is, I think, the first challenge that I came across, which was, I have a really strong personality. I get really committed to things, especially this. And I've tried to hold myself to a really high standard. And one of the things I'm really trying to do is maximize the way that I'm showing up for the people that I'm already connected with, and trying to be more present. So in the past, I felt like my affection for people, like, I'm really big on words of affirmation. I'm the best cheerleader for my homies. And so I kind of felt like that was enough because I'm so intensely affectionate with the people that I love. Yeah. Feeling like I'm loving, I'm checking the box, I'm doing the thing. But redefining what love looks like and all of the facets of it really made me want to try out other ways to show up in love, other love languages. So yeah, trying to be more present. Now, on the other side of things, I am a really extreme introvert. I get so much energy from being alone, and I get so drained by being with people. And it just occurred to me that, like, maybe that is why I settled for, like, just being people's cheerleader, because that doesn't take a lot out of me. Yeah. But in trying to show up and connect more and start friendships with people, I found myself very drained. Like, I feel like we had a weekend where we spent a lot of time with people. I had a lot of like phone conversations with my long distance friends. And I was just like, I'm exhausted. How does one live a life of connection and full maximized love for their people as an introvert? And so I've really been dealing with trying not to change myself necessarily, but like, how do I make that adjustment where I'm not like lazy loving, resting on my laurels?
Wow. It's a really good way to put it.
Right? Like, how do I not do that? And in my self-assessment, I feel like maybe I'm leaning too much on the should of it, of like, I should be going to this event. Like Kat, I have a friend Kat who is like a social butterfly, and she has so many things going on, and telling myself like anytime Kat invites me out, I should show up so that she sees me loving her and like doing this thing that she's invited me to do. And I'm realizing like, I don't think that I can be that person.
Yeah.
And maybe the balance is showing up more often, like pushing myself, but also like giving myself that time to lay back and recharge.
Yeah. Start to feel a little drained. You mentioned love languages. Do you know like the love languages of your main friends that you want to connect more with? That's
a good question. So I mentioned Kat. I feel like her love language is quality time. Homegirl is always with a friend, always. And so she loves like that companionship and feeling like she's in someone else's space. I feel like my other friends, okay, I don't really know. And that is something I should lean into. And actually, one of my closest friends, maybe even my best friend. Do adults even have best friends anymore?
I think adults have like multiple best friends. It's
yeah.
Like, you're the best at this. You're the best at this.
Perspective. Yeah. But actually, my friend Danny, who I just love, I adore so much. Hey, Danny. I actually asked her to evaluate me as a friend. And I feel like when we have that conversation, we'll probably have the conversation for the podcast, actually. But I should ask her what her love language is, because her evaluation of me is going to be different depending on her love language. Because if it's words of affirmation, I feel like Danny's going to be like, you're doing great.
Yeah.
But if it's quality time, acts of service,
yeah,
she might have some feedback for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's powerful. I think it'll help take some pressure off of you in that should space.
Yeah.
Because one, like, you're not going to get it right this first go around anyway, right? So it's trial and error. You got to learn your balance and how like loving, prioritizing yourself and making sure that you're making space and prioritizing your friends, like how those balance out. And then like maybe me showing up to this thing for this friend isn't as important to them as it is for me to do these acts of service or those words of affirmation. And like, I think I got it on lock there.
Yeah.
And like this friend probably only need to pop up once a month because like I only got so much energy for that.
You know what you said brought up a good question for me, which is like, who even defines what your love needs to look like? That might need to be a whole other episode, but it's like, do I just decide that my love is going to be like this set of things? This is what I got for you? Or is it better to say like, how could I make you feel loved?
Yeah.
I know that's
it's a two-way street. It's so much of a two-way street. And there is the role that you want to play in a relationship, and there is the role that somebody else cast you in the relationship. And I think it's like finding that fine balance. And it sounds like you have already been playing a role and you're like, yes, I want to play this role.
Yeah.
But you get drained.
Yeah.
In this role, and it's like finding that balance. But then even to go further, every friend may not need you to play that role.
Yeah. That's true. Cause like me as a friend, I don't care if you show up for anything. You could show up for none of the things and it's perfectly fine.
Good. Yep. Same.
All I really want from a friend is like someone to tell me that like I'm worthy and okay. Oh, that's probably why I'm like everybody's cheerleader. Oh my God, full circle moment. That fully makes sense. That's why I show up like that.
Yeah, a lot of times we love the way we want to be loved.
Yeah. And you know what? As I was thinking about it, it's like all the things we talked about with love, which I'm not going to remember all of them, but it's like care, responsibility, honesty, affection, and communication, something like that. None of those require your physical presence now that I think about it. So it's like really just holding onto those principles of love. You can do that without it having to look physically, like in the physical world, without it having to look a certain way. I think the responsibility of the love comes in to say, hey, I'm committed to your spiritual growth, and I want to make sure that I'm giving you what you want and need as a friend. Let's talk about your love languages. Let's have an open discussion about like how I'm doing. I'm actually feeling much better.
I like that. I think we just worked through a little something.
Yeah,
right there.
thank you for that, baby.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Period. Yeah, so I'm gonna do that. Maybe I'll do that with more than just Danny, and just like check in. Now, I will speak to one thing. I am afraid of my friends telling me that they don't feel loved. It goes back to the thing we talked about, but I'm a little afraid of someone being like, I don't feel love. I'm afraid of like the guilt that will show up.
What's the worst case scenario if that does happen? Like,
it's just the guilt. But you're right. Like, that is the worst part of it, of just being like, man, I'm so sorry I didn't show up for you. But it'll also, I feel like that'll be a flash in the pan if that's the feedback I get, because then we get to move to, all right, let's repair this.
Yeah. Goes back to hard conversations that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Also, we talked about Saint and like him growing up and having moments where he might not have felt loved, and telling us that, and like being able to own it, respect and validate, and then move forward. Same thing with your buddies.
You're right, with my buddies. That's what Steph calls Saint's little preschool friends.
Little preschool.
Yeah.
Buddies.
That's a really great. Thank you for helping me work through that. Okay.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. That'll be $150.
Session over. Sorry, your time's up.
Yep, I take all the insurances, so whatever you got.
Or worse, I take no insurance.
All right, so I had a ball with that conversation. I think we fleshed out a whole lot of stuff, and we do want to make this conversational. We want to make it interactive. And so we have questions for you all to please leave in the comments. One thing is, in what ways are you great at showing up and acting in love, and what are some of your shortcomings? Another question that we have is, what is the story that you're telling yourself about how you're showing up in love? Would love to see those in the comments and just kind of hear your stories. And I think we can now hop into our songs of the day, or songs of the episode, I suppose.
Yeah. So my mom was actually our studio audience of one.
This is a great studio audience too.
I'm not sure if we're going to keep or delete the part where her phone rings while we're recording, but she was listening to that episode and she actually suggested a song for the episode, which I feel like is the perfect way to kick this thing off. And it is Stevie Wonder's Love's in Need of Love Today.
Nice.
So
good. I'm not familiar with this song.
Not?
No.
Okay, I have to play it.
Yeah.
After we're done.
Stevie Wonder was never like a staple in my household, but in yours, like, I noticed that everything goes back to Stevie.
Yeah, Songs in the Key of Life is like everything.
Yeah.
We got to put you on. But yes, it's a great song. We should put it on the More Love playlist.
With it. Yeah, that's be dope. Let's do that.
What's your song?
For me, my song is by Mary J. Blige, the queen of R&B.
Period.
Love is all we need.
It's my jam.
Yeah, because I think that's a true statement. It's a very true statement. I think love is all we need. Of course, we need other stuff, but love is all we need to keep us together, make everything work the way that I think we all want it to work, especially in between each other when we're out in the world. If we just inject a little bit of love into our days, like, I feel like your nights will be happy.
I love it. To make everything complete, all we need is LOVE.
Hey, so good. So good.
Such a pop. I'm so impressed by that choice.
Yeah. Shouts out to the More Love playlist. So we'll link it. We'll link it in the description. We'll do the More Love playlist, and every week when we drop these, we will add new songs to that playlist. And I think will we take suggestions?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, if you want to add to the playlist, please leave a comment.
Yeah,
I love that. I love building a good playlist. Let's do that together.
Yep, let's do it.
So I'm excited about the next couple of episodes, actually.
Yeah, because we're gonna dive deep into like our own origin stories.
Yeah. So, okay, we've defined love, but next, in this next couple of episodes, it's going to be a series where we dive into self-awareness.
Yeah.
And first up is Steph.
It's going to be my turn.
So the next episode is all about Steph.
Yeah.
Recording these episodes was like very much like intimate therapy experience.
For sure.
So Steph is going to cover how his narrative about himself, his own identity changed as his understanding of home changed as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in the next episode, I will dive into who I am and how that's changed over time. One of us, I'm not going to say which, one of us sheds a tiny thug tear.
Yeah, guess you got to watch to see who it was.
To see who that is.
All right. Thank y'all for spending a little bit of time with us here today.
And if you are excited about walking the path of love with us, then subscribe. Check us out next time.
All right.
Peace.
We got a vibe, disagreements won't destroy. We go back like vinyls and Polaroids.